Imagine it rains today. I see some British people in the audience smiling at me with confidence. Rain is their thing, we know. For the people from the Côte d'Azur, rain, that's when there's water dropping from the sky. Now imagine it rains and you go outside wearing nothing but a paper hat like this one to protect you from the water. Now you'll get soaked, the Brits can confirm. So when it rains again tomorrow, the one thing you will definitely not be using is a paper hat. Learning what a certain action in history led to is what academia calls an historical argument. In line with Albert Einstein, who once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, I would like to present to you today why I have found austerity, as it is pursued today, right now in Greece, as the biggest insanity of the 21st century. And why I think it is the German language that has driven Europe insane. Now that was a bit too quick maybe, so I'll start in the beginning. I'm at a university here where we have quite an interdisciplinary approach. We study economics, we study sociology, political science, and as a nice wee icing on that educational cake, we study the Middle East, its languages, its societies. And, well, why am I even mentioning this? It's about 1 year ago, we had like one of these terribly long days that every university student learns to hate at some point. We first had a long session of economics. We talked about the Greek austerity and the theory behind it. Then we switched classrooms to have a class about the modern history of the Middle East. And about half an hour into that class, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Literally, I was sitting there, and we were talking about Egypt in the 19th century, but I felt like we had never even left the economics class. Literally everything we were saying, or had been saying about Greece, we're now saying about Egypt. Egypt had massive debt in the 1870s. To whom? The European banks that had given money to the Egyptian government on, let's say, questionable terms that it was now no longer able to repay. Greece had massive debt in 2010. To whom? The European banks had given money to the Greek government on terms that were, let's say, questionable, that Greece was now no longer able to repay. Egypt tried to consolidate its debt. Because the European politicians got scared for the stability of their banks, they put in place a commission, the Joubert-Göschen Commission, that would take over politics in Egypt and run their government to make sure that the money from the Egyptian people or from the Egyptian government would be paid back to the European banks as quickly as possible. A little fact aside here, the first law that they introduced raised taxes on tobacco because people basically consume it at any price. Why that is important, you'll see in a second. Greece declared its budgetary deficit in 2010. The European politicians, once again afraid for the stability of their banks, put in place a commission, this time they called it the Troika, that would make sure that the Greek government would repay its debt to the European banks and governments. Now, of course, things had gotten a bit more complicated. Now there was this thing called democracy, and a constitution that was somehow dictating how laws were supposed to be made. But as the saying goes, money rules the world. So they found a way to give the Troika a veto right over any law that passes the parliament in Greece. And finally, this way, the never elected Troika dictated the laws to the Greek parliament. And, well, you might actually know now what the first law was or what the first austerity package included. It was indeed a law that would increase taxes on tobacco because people consume it at any price. It was like the Troika was playing by a 140-year-old playbook. Now, why? I could keep going at this pace for another 20 minutes. I could give you another 20 minutes of details about the parallels between Greece and Egypt, but it would bore you and it would bore me too. So let's just talk about the elephant in the room, the question mark I see in your faces. Why is all of this even relevant? Imagine Austerity is our paperhead, and the debt crisis is the rain. Indeed, in 1876, no one could actually know if austerity would one day lead to growth, because they had never tried it before. It's like you're the first person to leave your house in the rain with nothing but a paperhead on. However, if politicians today claim the same thing and say, well, we don't know, but there's a good chance in 5 years Greece will be absolutely fine, well, then they should look into their history books. Let's look into what lessons we can possibly learn from the Egyptian case. Is there something we can learn for Greece from the Middle East, from Egypt, in the 19th century? I tried to do some research after that day last year, and it's a bit difficult because obviously GDP per capita data from 150 years ago, kind of difficult to find, but there's this project which is called the Medicine Project that uses historical data to find GDP data for days that, well, are quite a long time ago now. And they at least give you a trend. They might not be especially precise, but we can get an idea of what the economic situation of certain countries was like 140, 50 years ago. So what we see here is that in the 1870s, compared to countries around in Egypt in the region, for which we can find data, is that they were, well, basically at like the common ground economically. However, then Tunisia, Algeria, and Jordan kept having economic growth, while from 1910 on, Egypt did not develop any growth and was stagnating. Now, if we expect a similar growth for Greece, that would be absolutely devastating, and Greece would soon be completely disconnected from all other European economies. The question, though, is there a way that we can connect this development to the austerity policies, or is this just a coincidence? Let's say 70 years of bad weather in Egypt. We don't know. Austerity means cutting budget and government spending in infrastructure, in education, and by lowering direct government consumption, always has a direct impact on GDP. Furthermore, there's this other thing that comes with cutting back the money that we put into infrastructure and maintaining our streets and railways, as well as education. Imagine for a second, you're a European investor, a businessman, and you want to start a new business or widen your business to the Arab world. You don't have any affiliation to any country there, you don't speak any Arabic dialect, so you don't really mind where to go. Now you can go to Tunisia, or you can go to Egypt. However, if in 1930, let's say, you'd go to Egypt, you'd have an infrastructure that is bad and would make it impossible or hard for you to produce and transport your goods. You'd have people that are not especially well educated. And finally, you'd have a country where there's higher taxes because they're still paying money back to the Europeans. Indeed, until 1956, Egypt was doing that. So the decision that such an investor would make is obvious. And indeed, this leads to like a vicious cycle, which means that all the direct investment, foreign direct investment, would go to the countries around it, and Egypt would get more and more disconnected. In Greece, can we expect a similar kind of development in Greece? Well, one might say that collecting some more taxes there won't actually destroy the economy, and that's true. But other parts of those austerity packages that were introduced in Greece, well, I would suggest definitely can destroy the economy. Infrastructure, we've already mentioned. But something that is even more dangerous for an economy, and something that affects me personally when I think about it, is education. Not many people actually know this, but the University of Athens had to fire 25% of their staff during the due to austerity measures. 25% of their staff, that means 1 in 4 classes is no longer held. That means 1 in 4 students can no longer actually pursue their degree, might have to wait a semester or 2. That is a year that they won't spend in the working force paying taxes. Even worse, many Greek students just left the country because if there's no classes to be held, if you can't pursue your degree, if you can't do what you want to do, you'll go somewhere else, right? Now, those people will study in France or in Germany or in England for a couple of years, but there's a good chance that they will never return to Greece. So the country of the great thinkers in maybe 20, 30, 40 years will be lacking exactly that, the educational elite. Now, if all of this is actually known, if we just have to read in the history books to find this, then why is Greece still running around with nothing but a paper hat in the rain to keep itself dry? Why do we still impose this austerity on the Greek people? Charlemagne, the great emperor of the Romans, once said, "To speak another language is to possess another soul." While doing my research on this topic, I realized that there was certain countries that always kept pushing for these austerity measures, where others were indifferent, sometimes suggested something else, but usually just went with it. Those countries were Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, Sweden. Now, interestingly, there's one thing that exists in all those 4 countries which concerns their language. The term debt, translated to German and to Dutch, and it's very similar in Swedish, gives you the word Schuld. Now, if you go on Google Translate and you put in the word guilt, it will also give you the word Schuld in German, because there's no distinction between those two terms. Every Sunday, millions of Germans go to church, where they pray, "Give us this day our daily bread." "And forgive us our trespasses." Now, Martin Luther, when he translated the Bible to German from Latin, he translated the term trespass as Schuld. Language defines the way we think. How does it do that? Let's do a quick experiment here. Could you all just spontaneously point southeast, please? Give it a go. I want to see some more hands. Thank you. Interesting. The person that was pointing to the ceiling back there, I want to have a talk to you later. That's interesting. Lea Boroditsky did the exact same thing with a group of professors in a room. And let's say, well, they messed up, just like we just did. However, then she did the same thing again with a group of 5-year-old girls in northeastern Australia. And those kids always got it right. No matter what time of the day, no matter if they knew the room they were in, they always got it right. Now, why is that? Those kids were from a native Australian tribe, and forgive me the pronunciation, if somebody is expert in the field, please teach me later. This tribe is called the Guuru Yimidir, I think. And in their language, they don't have terms like right, left, in front, or behind. But instead, they use south, north, west, so on. So when I'll want to talk to you in that language, and I'll be like, "Can you move in? I want to squeeze into the car." I'll be like, "Can you move southeast? I got to squeeze in here." Or, "Oh, I left the keys in your room. They're on the north end of the table." This way, the Guuru Yimidir generally conceive the world in a different way because their language works in that way. So cognitively, when they have to process information, they will process it in a way that is very different to how we do it. In the same way, for a German to think about financial debt always has this connotation, this idea that somebody who's lent money, which is a normal financial transaction to anyone else, somehow is a little bit guilty. There's something shady about it. Now, very practically, imagine a German politician leaving a meeting where they were talking about the option of maybe allowing a debt cut to the Greek government. He will have to stand in front of the cameras and be like, yeah, we know they were trespassing, they're kind of bad people, but we're going to let them get away with it, you know. That's just how it is. This kind of arguing for the well-being of the perpetrator has never been very popular in democracy. So in the German politics, and it's similar in the other countries I mentioned earlier, there's no real alternative policy, because in the way that people see the situation, there's no way that they would think about, yeah, maybe austerity is not the only way, maybe there is another way to get the Greek government better organized, get them to impose taxes more strictly, but at the same time get their economy to grow again, give people chances. I thus argue that it's not economic preferences or Germany especially needing that money from Greece, but just that language barrier, the way that we think, that has imposed austerity onto the Greek people. This also explains why it is indeed Germany, Austria, Sweden, and the Netherlands that have always been pushing for this policy. But then we need to think about what this leads us to. Well, what I want people to take from this, and that's maybe a dream, but it would be so nice, if just like the great German linguists, the great professors of the German language could sit together somewhere. I don't mind, it can be a conference, maybe just over a beer in a bar somewhere, and just kind of find a new term, to finally put an end to the unhealthy intermingling of economics, morals, religion, and finance, because those things just don't have anything to do with each other, and they shouldn't. Furthermore, we've seen today that it doesn't necessarily need economists to interpret economic studies, models, or theories to understand that maybe austerity is not the best way to go. Maybe there's another way that will help the Greek economy get back on its feet. Indeed, history has a story to tell us. And that story is that, yes, indeed, if we look to the Middle East, we see it. Austerity has failed us before. The question that the following years thus have to show us, or answer to us, give an answer to, is if our policymakers will finally be able to listen to that language, to that voice of history, and overcome the language barrier, especially in those Germanophone countries. Because it has a strong message to tell us. That is, when it comes to a debt crisis, austerity is like a paper hat to keep you dry from the rain. It simply doesn't do the job. Thank you very much.